they would have probably killed them all. So they had to get rid of his body at nighttime. In 1540, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, so you see here in this slide actually, the place where it is believed that it was dumped in the river. Coronado crossed the desert of New Mexico, accompanied by 300 noble Spaniards and by 1,000, you see the map, starting from Mexico through Arizona, New Mexico. And actually, also Coronado was looking for another great treasure. And the story about this great treasure had actually been put around by this monk, Marco from Nice, a French monk, who was actually a liar probably, or he was a very good creator of fictions, or probably he had another purpose. Let's say to stimulate Coronado to go around because he wanted, this was one of the main purposes of these missionaries, to find the new people whom to actually pass on the Christian faith, but there were no treasures. In 1542, they proceeded as far as Kansas, but they realized that actually that the Indians that they found, they were even poorer than those actually of New Mexico. So that in the end, after this tremendous expedition, they had to go back decimated. Many of these Spaniards were ill, many they were wounded, and they returned to Compostela. Francisco Vasco de Coronado was certainly disappointed in his pride of conquistador because he had not been able to find all of the treasures that he imagined would find in the famous 7 golden cities of Cibola. But he didn't know that actually he would have been destined to go down in history as the first white explorer that had the chance of taking the first look to the inland of the United States. There were no horses on the American continent, and before the arrival of the Spaniards, and actually the Spaniards on their boats took their horses with them. And it was because of the cavalry that just a few Spaniards were able actually to defeat 2 big empires, the Aztec and the Inca Empire, and actually to defeat all of those Indian tribes they had to fight against. This is what was going on in the south. Let's say these fights with the Incas and the Aztec, but in the north there was something very positive for the future America. Coronado left behind hundreds of horses. These horses in the immense prairies, American prairies, multiplied, and actually the natives, Indians, they learned how to capture them, they learned how to ride them. And unfortunately, this was something positive, but later on, these poor Indians that once used to be actually farmers, turned into bands of hunters, very good riders, who actually were, had to cause great problems to the white people who actually were trying to colonize the territory that now belongs to the United States. Another gift that was given actually to the Indians was the rifle, but the Indians never learned to make their own ammunitions. The Mustangs that are nowadays one of the American symbols of freedom, in effect, unfortunately at times they cause problems to some farmers, and unfortunately are also killed when no one is looking, and other people instead are trying to save, you know. They were actually, they are the descendants of those horses brought by the Spaniards. And these horses were actually, as we mentioned before, the reason of why the Spaniards in their fights were, could not be defeated. Actually, you have to know that the Indians believed that the rider and the horse were just one creature, one divine creature. And actually this actually gave them the advantage when they were fighting against the great multitudes of enemies. In front of the villages of New Mexico and Arizona, and that were not willing to surrender to the Spaniards, the Spanish captain, they drew their sword and they shouted the Santiago, and this was actually the signal of attack. And there were no pueblos, no Indians who could actually fight back efficiently, who could resist their attack. And in this way, the Spaniards, starting from the eastern coast, we saw Florida, we saw also Texas, they started little by little actually going west and to the villages on the hills, to these pueblos. The Spaniards used always to give names related to the Catholic faith. So that we have Santa Clara, Saint Ildefonso, we have San Juan. The Spaniards actually, they feared only one thing. They feared most than anything else, the desert. Because in the desert, in the whirlwind of sand, their soldier died, they got lost. And actually, in spite of all of the dangers, the poison water, the bite of the snake, if we read the accounts of these first Spanish reporters, in spite of all the things that they suffered, actually they had always words, they wrote words of amazement, of admiration for the painted desert. They were actually the first, actually who had the chance of witnessing the beauty of American nature. And for example, they were actually amazed by the beauty of the canyons that looked like immense wounds of the earth. They were actually amazed at the shapes of the cacti that actually looked like almost like human forms. And in the desert there were the most diverse animals. There was the dangerous cougar, there was actually the coyote, the runner, that is a bird actually that never flies, but it runs so fast almost like a car, challenging every kind of animal. But at a certain point, the Indians actually reacted against the Spaniards. As a matter of fact, August the 13th, 1680, actually is a date that is written in blood in the historic colonization of the American Southwest. A spirit of rebellion was already circulating along the Indian villages. And in the Indian villages that were controlled by the Spaniards, who actually ruled these villages with the fist of iron. And for examples, they prohibited the Indians their religious ceremonies. They forced the Indians to baptize. They forced the Indians to live the life of the missions, to stay together with the monks and priests. And it was, you see the stature there on the left, one Indian of this San Juan Pueblo who organized actually the conspiracy. The Indians overwhelmed the Spanish garrison. They attacked the churches and they actually massacred about 400 Franciscan monks, and they even occupied the city of Santa Fe. And it took almost 12 years to the governor, you see there, Don Diego de Vargas, for the Reconquista, their sake to get back actually all of those territories that had been taken by the Indians. So what we can actually see is that the Spaniards in their galleons, they brought all kinds of people, noble people, adventurers, greedy soldier missionaries who were inspired by God and who wanted to bring about the faith. But unfortunately, nobody succeeded in realizing actually their dreams. We see here the